Broadcasting from the Blanchistan Centre. This is Phoenix FM.
The internet is a communications tool used the world over where people can come together to bitch about movies and share pornography with one another.
According to the Nerd Index, you should be upside down in a junior high toilet around the clock.
This is We'll do it live! Time goes in, time goes out. Never miscommunication. It's over 9,000!
My name is Foxy.
The balls are in there. Do a barrel roll! Don't face me, bro! It's a trap! I'm a fire in my labor! Time to Hey, Charlie, wake up! Oh, God, oh, man!
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the Nerd to Know Basis Show, airing on Phoenix 92.5 FM and all those other wonderful places on the internet, such as YouTube and, of course, our own website. I am Cian, and with me once again is Kev. Kev, how are you doing this week?
I am Dandadan doing great. Cian.
Well, that's Dandadan fantastic.
Fantastic.
Now, we have a lot of the kind of recent big media kind of milestones like Penguin, and I know you kind of touched on Agatha all along a few weeks ago, and some Nintendo shenanigans and what's becoming an ongoing segment. But let's start with a show that made me feel so very old because I watched it and I got scared and confused. What is this dad thing?
You are, of course, referring to Dandadan, the newest anime on Netflix. It is Dandadan. As talking to somebody who has watched it, Cian. You need me to break it down for you, right?
I watched it, like I said just before we started recording. I did watch it at like 3 a.m. with my young son refusing to sleep. So, it started out in a high school, and then I think I just went to get a glass of milk or something, and then all of a sudden they were being operated on by aliens. So I kind of felt like it was going faster than my brain could keep up with it. So if you could break it down like I haven't seen it, I would appreciate that.
Okay, so the basic premise. So you're absolutely right. It did start in a high school, like most anime do. And it follows our two main protagonists, Momo Ayase and Ken Takakura, or as he is lovingly called, Okarun.
Right.
And both of them are just kind of going about their high school lives. Okarun is a very quiet, lonely, nerdy guy who just loves his aliens and his spaceships and his conspiracy theories about UFOs. Whereas Momo is your very outgoing, very brash, very social, popular girl. Who has just broken up with her boyfriend because he was an absolute pain in the butt for not respecting personal boundaries. And while she's being kind of cajoled and goaded by her popular girl best friends, she decides to take it upon herself to kind of interact with Okarun, seeing the lonely guy, and just kind of decides to just try and kind of make a friend. Realizing
she's just had a rough relationship. She's trying to get to know someone who's the polar opposite,
immediately realizing he's kind of a bit weird, she backs off, but he pesters her. And through an ensuing argument, they find out that she believes in ghosts, but thinks aliens are dumb and stupid. But he believes aliens and UFOs are absolutely 100% real, but thinks ghosts and spirits are fantasy.
Right.
And so they challenge each other to go to hotspots of both pieces of the paranormal. She goes to a hospital that's supposed to be a hotspot for alien activity.
Right.
And Okarun goes to a tunnel that's meant to be haunted.
So they've both gone to separate places.
Yeah, and they're on the phone to each other, basically challenging each other to go do this. Secret twist is they're both actually wrong and right. aliens and ghosts both exist. And
Yay.
she gets abducted by aliens who try to
Yeah, how
do,
you gonna phrase this?
do not so great stuff to her.
Right.
Whereas he gets chased down by an old lady spirit who attacks him and steals his wiener. His
Right,
banana.
so we're just throwing on at 5 to the wind, I see.
Hey, listen. It's all anatomy, Kian. This is science, Kian. Biology.
Apologies to all the horrified people who just careened their cars off the
She
M50.
steals his salami. But in interacting with this old lady ghost, he also inadvertently gains superpowers
Right.
and basically transports himself to the hospital to save Momo, who also in the act of being assaulted gains psychic powers.
Right. They're both superpowered teams, but one is supernatural and one is sort of like sci-fi-ish.
Haunted.
Yes.
They lock away the evil granny ghost. They lock away the evil granny ghost. They defeat the aliens. They break out. Everything's going fine, except they realize he's still missing his ding dong.
And thus, the greatest romance in the history of fiction is born.
Episode 1 ends.
Yeah, let's highlight that. That was one episode. You see what I mean about how, like, you leave for a second to change a nappy and just the show leaves you behind.
Well, Kian, your problem is that you didn't pause.
Yeah, I know, but by contrast, this is the new one. But I was watching Comey Can't Communicate on Netflix, and that's one where it's like, you can kind of get the gist of it, and it's more like about the atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. Like, you've just described more that happened in like 7 episodes of that in one episode of Dandadan, Dandadan, Dandadan.
And what you're telling me is that the pacing in Comey Can't Communicate is trash, whereas Dandadan is perfect.
Well, I mean, if it's going so fast, you can't keep up with it. Like, throw me a bone here. Ghosts and aliens at once. Even like Mob Psycho 100 would go like chill out a bit.
Well, I think actually you've kind of hit exactly where I think this show would kind of cater to. It's in a very similar vein to like some Mob Psycho.
Right.
Where it's supernatural. Like, it's supernatural fantasy, but kind of still rooted in a lot of everyday mundanity.
Right.
Like a lot of the kind of the tension and conflict involved still kind of involves these two going about their day to day, and it is a romance. They do end up kind of falling.
They still have to go to school and all that kind of stuff.
They still have to go to school. They still have to kind of deal with all that, but also they're being hunted by various spirits from the other realm.
Okay. But like, and it should be said, the animation is gorgeous. Like,
oh yeah.
I know it's not an anime comparison, but it reminded me a lot of like Nintendo Wii era, like Not About Heroes type things, where it's like CG somewhat. It's like kind of riding that line between like the more hand-drawn stuff and sort of the 3D stuff. Like,
oh, there's a chase scene later on that just throws like any sense of two-dimensionality out the window and just goes full like 3D environments.
Right.
And is played to William Tell. It's incredible. No, but that's a good thing I wanted to mention is the anime studio that's making it is Science Saru. Most notable for actually, if you're a fan of Netflix anime, they did the recent Scott Pilgrim anime.
Oh, that explains it, because that was gorgeous too.
And Devilman Crybaby a few years back.
I was gonna say it did remind me of Devilman Crybaby, because like, that was exactly the same to this. I watched the show, like, thought it was going to be one thing, and then at like the 13-minute mark, it just went completely off the rails in a different direction. And I was, no, I'm done. Too much. I'm Grandpa Simpson. What's with it now is weird and scary to me. Like
Okay, then if
I can appreciate the craft, but I'm gonna go sit in my Barca lounger and
okay,
watch
then
Pokemon from the 90s.
okay, then what I might actually recommend you is another Netflix anime that's been releasing recently.
Yeah.
Um, called Ranma One Half. You ever heard of this before?
No, no.
Okay, so it's actually a very old anime. I think it was a manga from the 80s that had its own anime adaptation then, and Studio Mappa are basically redoing it now with modern animation.
Okay.
Releasing on Netflix once a week. It's another rom com, but a bit more straightforward.
Mm.
Quotey fingers, straightforward. It is still anime. Let's grain of salt here. The whole premise of this one, it's a karate dojo in Tokyo, where the dojo master has three daughters, and a Chinese dojo basically have an arranged marriage with them, where
Right.
their son is set up to marry one of the daughters. Son shows up from China. Thing about the son, though, is he has been cursed by a Chinese lake that if water gets onto him, he turns into a girl.
Right. Okay.
And from there, it's kind of just a slapstick comedy rom com about this just various like cast of like, their schoolmates and that, schoolmates, neighbors, teachers, and what have you. Just kind of getting into hijinks with not knowing which Ranma is the boy or the girl. So it kind of
Okay.
it
All
plays
right.
with
That has a
identity
kind
and
of comedy
gender.
of errors sound to it.
Yeah, like it's like that's it. It kind of invented the harem anime genre back in the 80s in its own way.
Such an unfortunate name, but however.
But yeah, no, if you're looking
Yeah.
for something a bit more straightforward, where it's not going to take me a thesis statement to explain the first episode, that one's a bit slower.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not as knowledgeable as you, but like one of my gateway animes was that what's it called? We covered it on the your own show, Nozaki-kun thing,
Oh yes,
where it's a
yes.
bit breezier and like a show like Card Captors from back of the day rides that line
Mm.
between breezy love triangle anime and like adventure like stuff. Uh, but I will take that recommendation and I will actually pass back Code Me Can't Communicate because the conceit of that one, even though it's not new, so I'll cover it super quickly, is that you have a girl who everyone thinks is amazing and gorgeous, your usual tropey thing, but she is too shy to speak. If you so much as look at her, she starts shivering. And the conceit is that your typical anime male protagonist is going to get her to make 100 friends by the end of the year. So every episode is like a misadventure where they try and pair her up with a different stranger from school, and you end up involved in that stranger's life for the whole episode. So if you're looking for something a bit, like I say, breezier, it's a very nice, easy, relaxing watch.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. If I need a palate cleanser, if I need something
Palate
to break the
cleanser is a
sweat
good
off.
way. Like it won't
Yeah.
change your life, but it is fun. Like like it does kind of have lots of nice animation styles in it. Uh, like I'm sure you'd find it a bit brainless compared to some of the things you've seen, but it's nice in that way.
Hey, listen, Kian, I've been watching Star Trek Enterprise recently. I could take brainless.
No, but that's different. Star Trek Enterprise thinks it's groundbreaking, and that makes it funny.
We'll get into it one of these days, but I'm still blown away that it's the Star Trek show with Mpreg.
Yeah, I know. You know, Lower Decks episode that went out this week had the like gel they put on before they
Oh
go on
God.
missions. The ones that like to strip down to their undies.
Here's the thing, okay? I know you've been watching it. I haven't started Lower Decks yet because I realized. Oh no, I haven't started the newest season because I
Yeah.
realized when I watched all of Lower Decks previously,
Yeah.
I think I had only really seen the Next Generation or like that and Discovery.
Right.
And since then, I've now watched all of it,
Right.
all of
So
Star
you
Trek.
can go back to it with a whole different appreciation.
So
like-
yeah, I'm gonna go back and watch all of Lower Decks again, and then catch into the new season. Then because I texted you the moment I heard about Spock 2,
Yes.
and I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen because it's incredible. And then you sent me the Spock 2 joke in Lower Decks,
Yeah.
and I missed it. I had no memory of that. It was
To be
way over
fair,
my
I
head.
hadn't remembered it either until you made me Google it. Yeah, it's because it's so dense with references. Like,
So yeah, no, I think I missed so much of that show because I
yeah,
hadn't watched like Enterprise and Deep Space Nine and
yeah.
Voyager. I think even at that point. So like, yeah, I now that I have more in my brain on it, I will catch up with Lower Decks later.
Well, to be honest, I've been rewatching Lower Decks from the start, and you realize, like, not to dwell on this too long, because we're not doing Star Trek this week, because it will eat the episode. But like, going back, I was really impressed with how deft the character work is.
Mm,
Like actually, if you watch it from like beginning to end, it's not like The Simpsons where everything like resets. There are subtle changes between the way the characters are in between, even within seasons. Like you can take a look at Mariner and Boimler and then how they are in 5 episodes time, and they will have changed their dynamic. Like, it's
oh
not
yeah,
just
no,
the same rinse and repeat, like.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm actually, yeah, no, it'll be shortly enough. I'm coming to the end of Enterprise, but as I said, we're not doing. Look forward
No.
to a look forward to an Enterprise episode in the future because
Said
I
no one
leaked
ever.
instead me.
I shouldn't laugh at my own joke, but that's not fair. Season 4 is actually quite good. Uh,
but
but anyway, look, animes and Star Trek are the bane of productivity on this show. So let's move to Penguin and Agatha all along. We've both seen
oh
it.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, like yeah, no, we want time syncs. Yeah, let's move over to a Disney show. That's definitely not going to take up the rest of the episode.
You know what? You pick your poisons. I haven't seen Penguin, so I would love to hear about it. What's the dealio?
The Penguin, I really enjoyed it. It wrapped up this week, and I think like I was surprised. I think when everyone heard they're making a Penguin spin-off from the Matt Reeves Batman, everyone was like, "Yeah, the Colin Farrell performance is great. Can this carry a show?" Because as well, he was kind of it was almost kind of a comic relief in that movie that was very grounded and like dark and kind of grisly.
Yeah.
And so when, you hear that and you think, oh, well, it's going to be kind of a slapstick comedy thing. I don't know. You rewatched The Batman recently, you told me. I don't know if they just changed his character in the movie, in the TV show at all, but he has much more darkness to him in the show.
Well, I mean, now I haven't seen the TV show, so I'll just say this in isolation. The deal with like the Penguin is that in the movie is he just runs the club that all the gangsters like hang out in. They don't really respect him. And like he does do deals, but like he only manages one deal and the Batman like ruins it. And then they like leave him under the bridge. And like, he gets a few like kind of passive aggressive jabs in just before Falcone gets shot. But you get the sense that like he's, in terms of being like a presence in Gotham, he's like well known enough, but he's like only like a mid-level like gangster. Like he's riding that, like I can't think of a better comparison, but like the way in Luke Cage in that Netflix show where you had like Cottonmouth and like he ran the club but also did some shady business out of the club, but he didn't run New York City. Like kind of that sort of 50-50 legitimate businessman, but like actually working for greater forces. So like I wouldn't call him comic relief. If anything, he seems kind of beleaguered and he's kind of trying to get by on bluster and charm, like,
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I think that's kind of a fair assessment of him. I will say the show by the end of it, you kind of it's not that it's a big reveal, but you realize as it goes, this is actually more of an origin story for what would be classically known as the Penguin.
Yeah, because they mostly call him Oz. Like they do refer to him as the Penguin because that's tied into the clues in the movie. But he's not like it's still kind of proto in the movie, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll put it this way, like by the end of the TV show, he's in the top hat and the tails.
Well, I figured as much. It looked like a mobster type affair. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's it. And it's not because the whole thing about the Matt Reeves Batman is that it is so grounded.
yeah,
It's not the Danny DeVito Penguin. It's a lot more kind of like down to earth and realistic. And
yeah.
the show itself takes that and even kind of goes further with it. I think there was a passing mention of the Batman at the very start during an intro crawl. He is not a factor in this show. This is a crime drama in the style of The Sopranos.
Right. Well, give us like the premise of it then, because I don't have HBO Max, unfortunately, so I haven't really heard anything about this.
So it's the entire thing, as you mentioned. Carmine Falcone gets shot in the Batman, and he was kind of the head of the head of Gotham's underground.
Yeah.
And so the entire premise of the Penguin is how that power vacuum becomes just an all-out gang warfare between Oz himself, Falcone's son and daughter, who I mentioned it last week. I have to remember this actress's name. The actress that plays Sophia Falcone is the highlight of the show.
She's the one from How I Met Your Mother and all that. Yeah, she's
Yes.
amazing. Yes, I'm gonna get her name.
Kristen Milotti.
She's great in loads of things. Like she was in that movie with Andy Samberg as well. She's one of those actors who can kind of go from comedy to drama incredibly fluently, and you don't have many actors like that anymore. Like,
oh yeah, no, she absolutely steals the show. But again, it's also an exceptional cast around her. The other kind of like warring gang faction is the Maronis, who is run by Salvatore Maroni, who's Clancy Brown.
Ooh, okay. Now you have my attention.
And his wife is played by Shohreh Aghdashloo. You never watched The Expanse.
I'm afraid I didn't. No, I didn't.
I can't think of anything else. Like she's been in other things, but I can't place it. She's kind of like a kind of an East Indian lady, but with this like really thick accent that's just incredible to listen to at all times, but also carries this sort of gravitas. She's Clancy Brown's wife, and it's great.
Okay, because like I haven't seen the show, but I'm familiar with like The Long Halloween, the comic is the one that, to be honest, most Batman things crib from nowadays. But that's the source where all the Falcone family come from. So when I saw that like those characters were being brought in, that gave me a lot of hope that it was going to be a very dense kind of drama type thing. And like, is the whole thing like a Godfather type thing, or is it more of a mystery? Like, what's the kind of the tone of it like?
Not mystery. I would say drama.
Okay.
It's just about all of these power players trying to like. It's all about deals and how deals go badly. Like,
right.
Oz tries linking up with Sophia, that falls through. Sophia tries linking up with the Maronis, that falls through. Oz tries to it's all of these different gang factions just trying to get one over on each other.
Little bit Game of Thrones. I'm gonna side with you this week. Mess you over. Go to the others. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you know what? For 8 episodes of television, it's really tightly packed and really well done.
Okay. Is Matt Reeves involved with it at all, or like?
He might be a producer. I don't think he's the showrunner.
Right. Okay. But it does have like a creative hand in it. It's not like I know Marvel is tight at times, but it's not like She-Hulk doesn't know what the Falcon is doing and all that kind of stuff. Like,
oh yeah, no, it's much looser than that. Again, as I said, Batman is a non-factor in this show.
But it does feel like it's cohesive to that film, like.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, because I did get worried. Like as much as I like Colin Farrell as the Penguin, I like Colin Farrell in general. Like, you know, it's when I heard immediately after the Batman that they were doing this and like a Detective Gordon TV show, I kind of saw the gold rush happening again, and I got a little bit nervous, like, you know.
No, I think HBO or not Warner Brothers not haven't actually been bad at this because, you know, I think a lot of people have the same feeling when they watched the Suicide Squad and said, okay, and we're getting a Peacemaker TV show.
Yeah.
And you first hear that, you think, who asked for this? But who but John Cena asked for this? But then, they had a story to tell. Peacemaker's great. This is
Yes.
kind of a very similar. This is a very similar story.
Mm. Okay, and like because you sort of alluded to this earlier, but like it's one thing to say, oh, this is Batman with like a dark tone to it. But like you could make the argument that the Nolan movies are Batman with a dark tone, or Gotham is a Batman with a dark tone. Like even compared to the Matt Reeves Batman, how do they kind of navigate the comic sensational stuff and sort of
They
make it work as like a real drama? Like,
Here's the thing: they don't navigate the comic aspects of it.
okay,
It's not a superhero show in any facet.
right.
Like there's no like D grade villains. Like there's no Victor Saz even in this.
I,
Like it
I
is
assume
very
Victor Saz would pop up, yeah.
like no nothing like this is a Batman show by like on a tangent. Like it is only barely a Batman show.
Okay.
Like it is its own standalone, and it is simply a Batman show by relation.
Okay. Well, I am glad to hear that then, because like I mean, it's funny to think that like with Penguin's kind of despite being unpowered is really one of the harder characters to get done without being goofy. Like immediately my head goes to like the Murgy's Meredith from the Adam West. Like, because he is just sort of a rich politician type. He translates very well into the modern day in some respects, and not very easily in others. So it sounds like I'm getting very impressed with the direction
Yeah,
they're
no,
taking with
they
this.
do it for a character that could so easily be a caricature in a cartoon
Hmm.
fiction of just a rich person. They do a very deft job of making him a human man.
Okay. All right. Well, this is one of those rare cases where I actually will try and chase this down on DVD or Blu-ray or something.
Actually,
Yeah.
HBO. It's not just HBO. It's on Now TV.
Oh, another streaming service. God.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm old. Just leave me behind. Oh, okay. But how did it compare then to Agatha All Along, which, as we kind of discussed, these are both spin-off shows that are like kind of making great dividends for Marvel and DC that happen to star villains and have young, more chipper sidekicks, as I understand. So, like,
Yeah.
and Agatha All Along in more than one way, because for those in the know, this is essentially the sequel series from the creative team that did WandaVision. So I know you covered it very briefly, but now that spoilers aren't really an issue, what did you think of Agatha?
I was very impressed by Agatha. I think we
Hmm.
can kind of go back to our first talk about it, and I was impressed but hesitant.
Yes, yes. Because so much of
I
it hinged on a mystery, didn't it?
So much of it hinged on a mystery, and just the history of Marvel TV shows led me down the path of thinking that led me down led me down the road
Down, down, down the road, down
of
to the
believing that we
disappointing
would end
finale.
up with just a of down the road to it being a big unsatisfying laser battle at the
Yes.
end. But it kind of met with and subverted my expectations. It did exactly what I thought it was going to do and what it should have done, which is spending about an episode a week getting into each of the witches, each of
Yes.
the members of the ensemble cast.
Hmm.
But then having the entire thing kind of wrap to, well, for a start, most of them dying. Didn't actually see that coming.
Yeah.
But then the entire thing kind of wrapping in on itself, obviously to be kind of Wiccan's origin story, but also go into explaining how Agatha came to be
Hmm.
with the death of her son. That last episode actually blew me away. um, because it obviously, as we find out, the road, the journey that we go on throughout the show is all of like Wiccan's powers kind
Doing
of
the one, the manipulating reality Westview type thing.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so when it's redefined that way, that the entire road was a bluff Wanda or Agatha had been using to steal power for centuries,
Yeah.
only for it to become manifest. Absolutely knocked my socks off. And actually, as a funny kind of as you said, I wouldn't compare the Penguin to Agatha all along. In a lot of respects, both of them are villain origin stories where they don't make the villain sympathetic in the end. Agatha's still very much evil by the end of Agatha all along.
That's true, but both shows are, by the sounds of it, kind of proof of the idea that it doesn't really matter what character you're starting with. It's all in like the execution. Like, I mean, we kind of saw that with like I liked the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but it was a mixed bag that started with more popular characters. Whereas WandaVision, I don't, no one apart from me, I think, really was mad for Vision or Wanda, was a show that took mid characters and just did a really, really good job with them. Like,
Absolutely. And
Uh,
so then, by that token, having a slightly memorable villain from a TV show that had a disappointing ending,
hmm,
giving her own show with a bunch of unknown characters,
yes.
they managed to pull it off. They did a really really great job, and like that's a part of that is, the story they told, which was
Hmm.
really really great. But it's also just the execution of it. I liked how in a very WandaVision way, every episode was a kind of a genre twist of itself.
Yes.
Like one was a kind of a 60s rock star studio. Another was a weird tarot, like witch throwback thing.
Kind of 1980s, like, yeah.
1980s sleepover.
Yeah.
Like so they really played fast and loose with the fact that the setting was kind of outside of time and space in its own. Um, but yeah, no, I was thoroughly impressed by it. And then obviously the kind of final showdown with Agatha and Death.
Yes.
Also, just the idea of just the whole thing of Aubrey Plaza just being Death, introducing the facsimile of Death into the universe.
Yes, who is like an important Marvel character. Like it should
It
be
is
said.
very
Are
funny
you up
that
on the death canon in Marvel?
only bits, but I am now sitting that it is very funny that we do have in the MCU a Deadpool, a Thanos, and a Death.
You got to me there before I did. Yeah, because in
The
Marvel, Death
Infinity
sometimes pops up
Gauntlet
as a
is
silver-haired lady. Yes.
yeah. The story about the Infinity Gauntlet is a completely different story than what the MCU thing.
Yes.
Thanos is jealous of Deadpool, and that's the cause of the Infinity Gauntlet.
Absolutely. And Mephisto is on his shoulder, encouraging all his worst instincts, like a literal shoulder devil. Uh yeah, but no, it's see, it's worth going back to WandaVision and comparing it to Agatha all along, because I think WandaVision's style was so pronounced that people really didn't notice how dense it was. Like, WandaVision pulled off the trick where, like, you were so busy looking at the style and looking at the clues that you didn't notice that it was incredibly self-evident that Wanda was the villain the whole time. And then within that twist, they also hid all of the Agatha stuff. So, like, and this show has done that. Hi, Oscar. Uh, and this show has done that in an even more pronounced way. Because think about full spoilers. Think about what the show has achieved in terms of like Agatha's a con artist, right? That's her whole thing. So this show starts by tricking you into thinking it's a detective noir thing, right?
Yeah.
Then it makes you think it's like a treasure quest thing about the road to get her powers back. And
Yeah.
then it tricks you into thinking we're going to get to know these characters and they all die. And then it tricks you into thinking it's over. And then it tricks you again because the whole time the road was the con. And they have to
Yeah,
lay clues for all four of those. And
yeah,
that's
all
not even
along.
including the fact that they were laying in the prophecy character, all her clues as well. That is an incredible amount of information to bury seamlessly within what was it, 9 episodes? Like, if you writing these scripts must have been like surgery, because tipping too far one way with the information or not enough with the other. I mean, like, just think about how we had to see Agatha in her cup fantasy from Wiccan's point of view. That had to be planned out too. I don't know how any team could have planned this out so well that it works on that many levels. Like, when the
Yeah,
other shows can't manage a beginning, middle, and end.
to
This is
have
like
that much.
circles within circles within circles within circles,
That's it. No, it's exactly as you said. It's to have this many veils of pretending it's going to be about all that's cast, then ignoring the fact that it's actually a Wiccan story, and ignoring the fact that it's that like Agatha's trying to play along because she thought the entire thing was a con. But as you said, given Patti LuPone's character, so much of this has to be played out of sequence.
Exactly.
And then like rewoven, restitched together in sequence while not giving away any of the twists.
Exactly. I'd love to see the whiteboard in like the writer's room where this was all laid out, because all these characters need their arcs as well on top of that. And the fact that death is there the whole time. You've got all the children of like Agatha's victims coming after her. Like it's just like, because I remember when like they announced the whole phase 5, here's all the Marvel things. Agatha, I think back then it was called Agatha Coven of Chaos, which is like, and it was
Yeah.
very much in the vein of who asked for this. But it just kind of goes to show that, like I said earlier, if you do a good enough job with it, people will care about your character. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse, like,
Yeah, and I mean, doing such a good job with it, like absolute like standout, just all of the cast. Like, I don't think there was any one actor that really stole it, because all of them stole the show. Catherine Hahn's still eating every piece of scenery she has her hands on.
Yes.
And is trying to share it with Aubrey Plaza, who is chewing on the other end of it. Joe Locke does a really good job at holding down the mystery that his character himself is.
There's another twist. You see what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's like
Patti
yeah.
LuPone's a treat, and Sashir Zamata just has this kind of gravity as the Green Witch, basically being just dragged through all of this, only to be the final girl, the only survivor of the entire ordeal.
Yeah, and that's poor Deborah Jo Rupp. Like, that was really upsetting.
It was. I don't know. I think it's. I think it just might be because she's the mom in that 70s show. It felt like a cameo, and she kind of, when you have a cameo like that, it kind of felt right that they just kill her off immediately.
No, but she was in WandaVision. Do you remember?
Yeah, no, I remember. I know.
But this is what makes WandaVision stronger, because she and her husband were like the first two characters in it. They were over for like the typical,
Yes.
oh no, the boss is coming to dinner. We must not make a mess. And then near the end of that episode, when he starts quizzing Wanda on her, like, where'd you come from thing, he starts choking, and it goes on for an uncomfortable amount of time. And then, like, it just goes away. And then in this series, she says, like, oh, my husband died. So the implication has to be that Wanda killed her husband in that first episode, and she just had to keep playing nice. So you've got all the WandaVision stuff. All those WandaVision characters were back in this series. So that's another dense layer of continuity they're weaving seamlessly through all of it, on top of the Doctor Strange stuff, like,
There was that moment where they finally come out of the road and Aubrey Plaza's sitting on the roof cackling her head off. And then it just cuts to the neighbors being like, what's happening now? I don't know, man.
I mean, They'd probably move if they could. But like, who could they possibly sell to at this point?
Who
But like,
doesn't
here's
know?
okay. Well, here's a question for you. I loved her like backstory in the last episode and all the stuff with the boy and all that kind of stuff. Uh, but even putting that aside, having the fight in the second last episode, did that fight work better for you than your typical Disney Plus Marvel last episode finale thing?
Absolutely.
And how
Easily.
come?
A couple of different things.
Hmm.
I think for a start, the emotional impact of by that point we had at least understood, if not been given the whole truth of the understanding of Agatha and Death's relationship
Right.
and the kind of the weight that that carried. But also in the execution of it, it wasn't just a Dragon Ball Z laser battle. There was at least like a modicum of choreography to it, and anything that wasn't choreography was masked by the fact that it was actually pretty brutal. It was
That's
like,
what I was gonna say. It felt like things hurt, you know?
oh yeah, no, I think this show really leaned into the fact that it's kind of working like kind of a PG-15 rating.
Mm.
I think like there's a couple of shots, like I think they cut into Agatha's tendon and you see the tendon.
Yeah.
And then the shards of glass flying everywhere, that's like death by 1,000 cuts. It's pretty grisly.
Which is strange because this is a show, like I say this as a teacher, where the adults and like the 8-year-olds that I kind of work with regularly all watched. So it had to strike that like now, obviously maybe it being a Halloween gave it a greater leeway to be a bit violent because you're kind of prepped for that week. But like this is a show that had to do all this stuff and also be appealing to all ages, like, so that's an extra level of difficulty on top of that.
Well, I mean, to what degree, especially with streaming and how easy it is to access anything at any time.
Yeah.
Like, what is what is an age rating at this point when anybody can jump onto a Disney account? Like, you can, like, I do think, like, especially within Marvel, and I think it has benefited from being able to tell more kind of adult, like teen adult stories like this.
Yeah.
But because from the ground up, at least up until Infinity War, it was nothing but family friendly.
Yeah.
It's always going
with the notion of it in like the like Civil War and like the Winter Soldier and that kind of stuff. But largely for a time, the adult stuff was the Netflix stuff and everything else was the family friendly stuff. Like,
yeah. So I think like I'm grateful that they're branching out into kind of something a bit more adult, a bit more kind of like a bit more brutal like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is an age rating for this though? If a parent will just let their 8-year-old and say watch the new Marvel show because it's Marvel. Everybody watches Marvel things.
Yeah.
But like I like this kind of wasn't designed for kids, but also how would you moderate that on a streaming
Well, I
service
think
like
the true crime first episode is a good way of like kind of in theory kind of weaning out anyone who's too young because they might not find it interesting, like,
Fair, yeah, no, potentially. I'm not like this. I'm not. Don't get into it. I'm not saying this as a complaint, and kids.
No, I'm just trying to imagine the thought process, like.
Yeah, in fact, I believe kids should be watching things more like this. I think there is an air of desensitization that should happen.
I agree. But like you don't put like the star of Heartstoppers into it unless you're making it for an assumed teen audience at least.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I think like for 13-year-olds and up, this is perfect.
Yeah, this is right up their street. There's even a Stranger Things vibe to the Poltergeist episode. Like,
I think that's actually. I think you kind of hit a good point. I think there was a great like a lot of cheap TV shows, to be honest, recently do have a kind of a greater Stranger Things influence, especially teen. Like anything sci-fi and teen in the past like decade has had their hand in the Stranger Things pool.
Yes, that well ain't run dry yet, apparently.
No.
I mean, look, Ghostbusters is basically built on Stranger Things at this point.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, when you have one of them in it, it was the same with the It movies.
Yeah.
That was they were like, oh, what, people love that? Yeah, let's just get like, I don't know,
Yeah, but the
how many
difference
of
between
those
this and
scenes can we get?
well, that's because like in the season 2 of Stranger Things, they all dressed up like the Ghostbusters, and someone somewhere saw that and ran down the hall and was like, "We got to build a franchise off this thing we don't own."
Pour money in this bag right now. We're
Get
making a
Paul Rudd
Ghostbusters
down
movie.
here right now.
I don't care if he's not on. I don't care if he's on a green screen for Ant-Man. Put him here.
He can be on a green screen for something else. It's a green screen.
There's no one else in that room. He could be whatever we can be in. He can be in whatever movie we want him to be in.
There you go. All right. Well, then I know this is like you're probably not as invested in like the comings and goings of like universes and franchise and all that. But do you think there's anything we can read into the Penguin and Agatha all along and their success of both of those things in terms of where DC and Marvel and all associated things are going next?
In terms of their individual franchises, it's hard to say with DC because they're in their kind of greater point of flux.
Yeah.
Where this is one of the first things under the James Gunn kind of umbrella, but it was even started before he really got involved, so hard to say. And I mean, for Marvel, who knows anymore? Like they again, this was great. Wolverine and Deadpool was great. We are staring down the barrel of a retconned Secret Wars movie that's being made in less than 2 years. We'll see how Marvel goes.
I mean, I think you can already see the slowed down production rate because, like, just looking at the next two things, you've got the Captain America Falcon thing with Harrison Ford and the Red Hulk and all that. And then you've got the sort of Marvel's version of Suicide Squad. You've got the Thunderbolts. I think, and as well as that, you've got like the last season of what's it called? The What If. I think I'm starting to, it could be my imagination, but I'm starting to see that they've gone, okay, you can't do 50 million things at once. Characters are now getting consolidated into less projects that have a clear, even from the marketing, this is the next thing that's happening in the Marvel universe-ness to them. Like, we're not in that sort of phase one again thing where it's a random thing, it's a random thing, it's a random thing. Like, I could be wrong, but in both of those projects, I see, okay, this is picking up that plot strand and going somewhere with it. And I think you may have your own personal feelings, but I think that is where phase four fell down a bit, was it didn't feel like there was a sense of progression to any of it. Like, you know.
Yeah, and I think the strengths of this current phase have been in they haven't needed to move that marker at all.
Yes.
Like the best shows have not been the worst shows have been trying to move the plot threads forward, and the best things haven't tried at all.
Okay. All right, I get you.
So I'm again, it's a wait and see. You know, I have low hopes for Captain America. I'm intrigued by Thunderbolts. I still, regardless of if either of them are good, I still think Secret Wars is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very indicative of how busy Marvel is that only now are we getting a sequel to WandaVision and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which came out in the pandemic. That's how much Marvel stuff has gone down, that they haven't been able to follow up either of those. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, no, 10 years ago it would have been unthinkable, but they needed to. Like, the alternative was the glut of getting 4 movies in a year and 3 TV series. And everyone hated that. There was far too much. So instead, we've got, I think, was Deadpool and Wolverine the only one that came out this year?
Unless you count, like, X-Men 97. Yeah, I think so.
I don't think, like, that's Marvel, but that's not MCU.
There was Echo as well, but I kind of consider that to be in that sort of holdover from a previous era type thing, which actually Echo wasn't bad. But yeah, I think
I'll take your word for it. You're the only person on the planet who's seen it.
I think if I'd had to watch it over the course of 5 weeks, I would have found it exhausting. But dropped in an evening, it's like, yeah, I enjoyed that.
But yeah, no, having Deadpool and Wolverine be the only thing this year, and then Captain America being early next year, I think like the pacing is better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I think there's like 13 potentially major plot strands going on at Marvel. Maybe a few have dropped because of the Kang thing. But yeah, I think simplify it down and
Hmm.
make it easier to follow. And whether that you can do that by more or less, I don't know. But that is my personal kind of where I'm at with Marvel because I'm too tired to follow all the things.
But damn, if that's not going to stop us from trying.
I mean, yeah, why not? I watched The
Again,
Acolyte. I'm up for a bit of punishment.
I skipped I think half of the TV shows that came out. You've watched them all.
Oh yeah, I'm rewatching Agents of Shield. I'm ride or die for Marvel. No one
You,
has seen Series 7 of Agents of Shield.
I don't even think the actors have seen Agents of Shield.
Imagine if I got to Series 7 and no one was there.
Jeez,
Like
Agents of
just no
Shield.
one on the screen.
I know like the canon is kind of fast and loose. It is wild that Agents of Shield is still canon, isn't it?
It is. Some people have implied that it's like alternate universe, but personally, I find that nonsense because it's more tied into like you can't remove the show from the Marvel universe because it weaves itself into the fabric of everything
Yeah, they
that's
have.
going on in the Marvel universe, you know?
Yeah, they have to like basically write half of a season around the fact that the Winter Soldier released,
Yeah, exactly. Like
and now they're the baddies.
yeah, now I will say about season 4, it ditches relying on the Marvel universe and does its own thing, and it does become
Hmm.
stronger for that. But like, yeah, no, it's like when Thanos turns up, it affects the plot of Agents of Shield. I think it's very disingenuous to say maybe after the fact that it's non-canon because you then have to imagine a second Marvel universe where exactly the same things happened exists. So I don't know. Yes, let's say it's canon. Probably doesn't affect anything, but it's canon.
No, it's just yeah, no, it's just kind of like even looking back now that it's finished, it seemed a bit odd at the time, but now looking back, it just seems like an odd remnant of, and frankly, an odd remnant of cable television.
It's yeah, well, it's like watching Enterprise as well. It was kind of made at the tail end of an era where you made 45 minutes of television and put it on every week, and it was made cheap because when you actually strip away the trappings of it, it is just charming actors having meetings in rooms over and over again. And sometimes there's a special effect. Like Agatha all along belongs to a different era of television than that. Like
Yeah, no, like there's a difference between 40 minutes of people sitting in rooms having conversations and the 20 to 50-minute mini movies they're making nowadays.
yeah, I'm not saying one's necessarily better than the other, because at least with the old Star Trek model, you got an ending once in a while. Some of these Marvel shows, you can do 6 episodes on a big cinematic budget and not get that.
Oh yeah, I like it's if a show is bad enough, the fact that it's trying to be prestige filmmaking is distracting. Bad television can be masked by mediocre set design and still be completely fine.
That's just
Again,
it.
Star Trek
Yeah.
Enterprise.
I stopped the book with this with Stephen Moffat from Doctor Who and Sherlock. Every show now is trying to be cinematic and it's trying to reinvent the wheel. And then occasionally they forget to put a wheel in it.
Well, I mean, I love it to bits. It's Breaking Bad's fault.
Oh, true. That's another culprit. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
no, that's I'd like because that was exactly at the like nexus point because that was a cable television show. Now, much more in the era of The Wire and the
Hmm.
Sopranos, that kind of style of filmmaking. But it grew as it grew and became more prestige itself. It blended into the Netflix model, and
Yes.
that's kind of where we've been ever since.
Yes. Well, I mean, Breaking Bad, your Game of Thrones, your that kind of stuff.
Game of
They made
Thrones,
TV
yeah.
into something that should be prestige. And then I lay at the feet of like Stephen Moffat and to some extent maybe Joss Whedon as well. The idea that TV had to be so clever that you have to argue about it in chat rooms about what it even means. Like, you know, the fusion of the two of those has led to some remarkable trash.
Yeah. When a simple episode of television could be the fourth episode of Enterprise where the ship's engineer gets impregnated by an alien species by playing chess. Simpler times. But we do not have time to get into that this week as this is the end of our episode.
We didn't get to the Nintendo shenanigans. That's a shame.
We didn't get to the Nintendo shenanigans, but we can get to the Nintendo shenanigans.
You're going to have to tell me off the air about this music Nintendo streaming service.
Well, I can tell you about it off the air, but the good listeners will have to wait till next week for me to tell them about Nintendo shenanigans because Nintendo will. Well, even if we don't remember, Nintendo will always be Nintendoing. So
that's very true, actually. Yes,
but you can, of course, find that and all of our other shows on our YouTube channel, which is now completely up to date due to the tireless work of Dara, with our entire back catalogue going back years, dozens, like. Hundreds of shows. You have so many hundreds to thousands of hours to get through if you like hearing us.
You want to hear our opinions on like something Marvel-y or Star Wars-y from 2 years ago? Whoosh! You want a time capsule of what people thought of the book of Boba Fett? By howdy, we got it. You want to hear us talk about Arthur for some reason? We did that too.
It is all there on the YouTube channel and all of the other streaming services, of which you can find all the links for on our website, nerdtoknowmedia.com. There as well, if you are at all interested, you can find our Patreon if you'd like to donate to us. We'd appreciate that. But until next time, I've been Kev.
And I've been so old. This television scares me. Make it go away.
And this has been the Unstoppable March of Time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Alright, so you're listening to the podcast, you're like, hey, I'm not in Ireland, how do I get in touch? Well, TuneIn has you covered. That's how you can check us out live when we're on the radio. You go to TuneIn and download the app, or you can check out the live streams on nerdtoknowmedia.com or Phoenix 92.5 FM. If you want to get in contact with us, it's very easy. Nerd to Know Media everywhere. Nerd to Know Media on Twitter, Nerd to Know Media Instagram, Nerd to Know Media on Twitch, Nerd to Know Media at gmail.com if you want to reach out via email. Hope to hear from you soon. Check out the Wrestling Rewind here on Phoenix 92.5 FM every Tuesday at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And of course over on nerdtoknowmedia.com, the only wrestling podcast by wrestling fans who don't hate wrestling. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.